Luke was deep in thought when his phone rang. He hissed when he saw it wasn't the caller he'd been waiting for. It was his longtime best friend, the one who was supposed to be his best man, but couldn't make it home for Christmas. Why is this dude calling me now? He let it ring, then finally answered. Hello. Hello, my G. What took you so long? Oh, I forgot you're busy getting ready for your wedding. The man's tone was cool. Luke's lips twisted with irritation. The best thing to do was hang up, so he did. Shaking his head, he slipped the phone into his pocket. He had no idea what was already in motion. Senior Bleke had arranged everything quietly, making sure no one in the house knew they were gone except his men. The phone rang again. This time it was the call he'd been expecting. He answered quickly. Stacy's voice came through the line. Sorry I called late. Something came up. It's fine. So, I found a priest to officiate the wedding, but he's been kidnapped. So, rest assured, if Plan A didn't work, Plan B definitely will. Stacy sounded certain, and Luke couldn't help grinning. This was exactly the kind of news he wanted to hear. A small wave of relief passed through him. Let his grandfather try to find a priest to officiate today. It wasn't going to happen. For now, the wedding was on hold. The groom and the bride are ready. But there's no priest, he thought. Let's see how it goes for you guys. The call ended. Luke set the phone aside and went back to bed. He'd missed his beauty sleep last night. Time to reclaim it so he wouldn't miss the drama, sure to unfold later. Silas steered the car through the gates of Gray's hospital and killed the engine. The staff were already on standby, waiting for them. 2 nurses rushed over with a stretcher. Josh's door flew open. They lifted Alex from his arms, laid her on the stretcher, and wheeled her inside with Senior Bleke and Josh close behind. Halfway down the corridor, they met the doctor, who took over and asked Josh and the old man to wait. They did as they were told. Senior Bleke couldn't believe he was at a hospital on Christmas morning. Not that Christmas meant much to him anymore. The only gift he wanted was not to lose someone else on that cursed die. He would never forgive himself. Josh stood there drowning in regret. Why had he let Alex sleep on the cold floor and then cranked the AC to its highest setting? Looking back, he knew how foolish he'd been. There'd been no need to prove a point. He should have ignored the impulse and found a place to sleep elsewhere. What if she didn't wake up? His grandfather would make him pay dearly. Worse, the old man had clearly grown fond of Alex. Josh was in deep trouble and prayed for a way out. Senior Bleke trusted only Gray's hospital. It was the best in the state with the finest equipment. It had never failed him, and he believed it wouldn't start now. Alex, dear, you know I like you. Please don't leave. He prayed silently. Alex had captured his heart, and that was why he had quietly redirected Luke's wedding day to Josh. With Luke's ceremony stalled, it was the perfect chance to get Josh married. The boy had never been serious about women, and Josh's feelings for Alex were a green light. For the old man, too. They had been standing since they arrived. Realizing the wait would be long, Josh and Senior Bleke moved to the waiting room and sat down, hoping for a miracle in Josh's favor. Alex felt strange and rose from the pavement where she'd been sitting for the past 30 minutes. It seemed her brother wasn't coming home after all. The best thing, she decided, was to go looking for him in every place he might be. If only Santa would protect him for her. She had taken only 2 steps when she saw her long, dead-eyed parents standing before her. She couldn't believe her eyes. Her heart leapt. Dad, Mom, what are you both doing here? We should be asking you the same thing, dear. Don't you think you're far from home? Neither of them was smiling. If they weren't happy to see her, why were they here? Alex looked up at them. What do you mean, far from home? This is my apartment, and Ander isn't around. I was just about to go look for him when I saw you two. Alex, her father said gently, search your memory and ask yourself whether you're supposed to be here. When you're done, go back home where you belong. There are people who love you and don't want to lose you. Ander is one of them. The young man is so worried about you. It's Christmas anyway. Merry Christmas. As soon as he finished, both parents vanished. Alex stood rooted to the spot, terrified and confused. First the lady, and now her parents. What did it all mean? She would figure out later. For now, she had to find her brother. Only then could she sit down and make sense of everything. "Merry Christmas to you both, too," she whispered. Ander felt relieved, but not entirely. Something about his big sister still didn't feel right. Who was that man? And why hadn't she mentioned him the last time they spoke? It wasn't like her. She told him everything. He couldn't put his finger on it. He had nearly finished packing his backpack. He was going home for Christmas and would be back in a week, so there was no need to take much. His roommate, Jordan, walked in smiling. "I'm going to miss you, bro. Take care of yourself, and give my regards to your big sis." "I will, man. Don't forget to do the same. It's just a week. We'll be back in school before you know it." "Yeah, you're right. Still, don't forget to have fun." They hugged, and Ander picked up his backpack. It was time to go. He would wait at the gate for the person coming to pick him up. Jordan escorted him outside the school. As they walked side by side, Ander remembered his first day at college. It had always been just him and his sister, and moving away from her had been harder than he'd expected. Everything was new, but it was for the sake of his future. Jordan had been as fresh as he was, but more experienced, and he'd stepped in like an older brother to help Ander settle. It hadn't been easy at first, but Ander adapted. He had to. After his sister, the person he cherished most was Jordan, though he'd rather not admit it. Jordan glanced at his friend and smiled, remembering how it all began. Ander understood him on a different level, and their friendship had never soured. Their bromance was beyond explanation. Even after college, Ander knew they would always be friends. Jordan stayed with Ander as they waited for the person who would pick him up. Ander had told him the latest developments and his fears for his sister's life. Jordan, in turn, told him he was worrying too much. If his sister had been kidnapped, the kidnapper would be asking for ransom and would not offer to come and pick him up. "Don't worry, bro. Your sis is probably safe, so chill." It was the third time Jordan had said this. Yet, despite everything, Ander was still worried. Undershined. There was no need to work himself up. Time would tell. He would wait and see how things unfolded. Jordan and Ander did not wait long before a Bugatti pulled up in front of them. They stepped back so they wouldn't be in the way of whoever the car was for, not knowing it was for Ander. Silas hurriedly got out of the car and walked toward Ander, who scrutinized him. Ander couldn't understand why the man was approaching him. Could this be the person who had been sent to pick him up? "Good day, young man. You must be Ander Coker." Ander nodded, and Silas gestured toward the car. "This way, sir." Jordan looked from the car to the man. Seeing nothing strange, he signaled Ander to go with him. Ander trusted Jordan's judgment. Over time, Jordan had proved he could recognize danger when he saw it. And if he was asking Ander to get in, it could only mean there was no danger. Ander pulled Jordan into a hug. "Yeah, make sure you take care of yourself and your big sis," Jordan said. And they broke the hug. Ander climbed into the car and waved at Jordan one last time before the car sped off. Jordan watched it disappear and smiled. "Enjoy your Christmas, bro. Merry Christmas." Jordan turned back. It was time for him to go home, too. In the car, Ander thought of asking a few questions but decided against it. The man behind the wheel might just be an employee. Even if he had information, he probably wouldn't share it. Most employees of rich men keep quiet because they feel they would be betraying their employer if they talked about such things. Underwashing. The car was dope. For the first time in his life, he had been picked up on Christmas morning in a Bugatti. His Christmas had just gotten better. Yet with all these thoughts bubbling up, one worry refused to leave his mind. All might not be well with his sister. His excitement faded, and he sighed. Silas watched the young man in his rear-view mirror and marveled at the striking resemblance between him and the new lady of the house. Blood, they say, is thicker than water. Anyone who saw the new lady and then saw this young man would not think twice before knowing they were closely related. Back at Gray's hospital, Josh and Senior Bleke were drained by worry and panic. It had been over an hour, and the doctor had said nothing to them. Only nurses buzzed around. At last, the doctor appeared and asked them to come to his office. They followed him immediately. Dr. Swift had been wondering what could have put the patient in that condition. He guessed he would find out from the Blekes. He led them into his massive office and asked them to sit. "Good morning to you both. I won't waste your time. I'll go straight to the point." The two prominent men waved off the pleasantries. Josh was not interested, and neither was Senior Bleke. The doctor might as well tell them what they wanted to hear. "I believe the lady is a relative." "Yes, she's my wife-to-be," Josh replied. The doctor stared at him, scrutinizing him. If this man was her husband, then he must know what had happened to her. Or perhaps not. The patient has a high dose of melatonin in her system, coupled with the fact that she was in a cold environment for a long time, the doctor said. Josh looked up immediately. He knew about the cold. That was his fault. But the melatonin left him clueless. If he was right, melatonin is a sleep aid that can have several side effects. It can make you feel as if you're in a different environment and think it's normal. He'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. No wonder when he pulled the duvet off her last night, she didn't move an inch. But how did melatonin get into her body? Senior Bleke could not believe his ears. A lady under his care had been drugged. He looked at Josh, who also seemed confused, and wondered if Josh was responsible. But he didn't think so. Josh liked Alex. He couldn't be the one to drug her. Besides, he knew Josh too well and knew what he was capable of. "So, are you saying she took melatonin, or what?" Senior Bleke asked, trying to understand. "No," the doctor replied. "From the tests we ran, it came through her last meal, and the dose is high. Right now, she feels alive somewhere else. And if care is not taken, she may drift further, which could cause her to die. We've placed her under observation to see how far this goes, but one of you needs to keep talking to her to help her understand that where she is does not belong to her. With a Christmas miracle, she might wake up soon." Josh clenched his fist and fumed. Only one person would dare him like this. Alex was truly not safe with him. This case had proved that he would have to guard Alex's life jealously with his own. Senior Bleke was lost in thought. Alex's first day in his mansion, and she had been drugged. By whom and why? This was serious. It meant the young lady was not safe in his house. Once again, one of his employees had betrayed him, but he would find out and fire the person with immediate effect. Punishment included. He didn't look for trouble, but that didn't mean he couldn't borrow one. He turned to the doctor. "What about the cold?" Her body couldn't protect her from the cold because it was asleep. So, the cold built up layers in her system. We've dealt with that. The issue now is that someone needs to keep talking to her until she wakes up. Josh nodded in understanding. He was supposed to be preparing for his wedding. Yet, here he was fighting for Alex's life. He could no longer blame himself. It wasn't his fault. Still, that didn't mean he was blameless. He could have realized something was wrong with her if he had been nicer. "So, we can go see her now, right?" Senior Bleke asked. The doctor nodded. Josh was on his feet before the other two. The doctor led them out of the office toward Alex's ward. Each of them lost in thought about how it had been possible for Alex to be drugged under their noses. Alex left her apartment determined to find her brother before going home. She had mapped out how to begin the search. Ander had a few friends whose houses sat close together, and she would start with the one who lived a few blocks from her place. As she walked, everything fell off, as if she didn't belong. But if she didn't belong here, where did she belong? This had been her neighborhood for 5 years. Why did it suddenly look strange? It's probably stress and overthinking, she told herself, and kept going. She reached the block, knocked, and a few minutes later, a boy of about 19 opened the door a crack and stared down at her. This was Ander's first friend in the neighborhood. Alex smiled. The boy raised his brows in askance. "Please, I'm looking for Ander. Is he here by any chance?" She asked. "Which Ander? And who are you?" Alex was taken aback. What did he mean? Who was she? "I'm Ander's big sister." Alex, remember? He stared at her, then shook his head. "I know Ander's sister, and you're definitely not her. Please go away. The person you're looking for isn't here." He slammed the door in her face. Alex stepped back inside. She couldn't understand what all of a sudden everyone was denying they knew her, as if she were cursed or something. This was not the Christmas morning she had imagined. Since this house had no answers, she would try the next friend. Out of all Anders' friends, someone had to know where he was. It was all so frustrating. Dr. Swift led Josh and his grandfather into Alex's ward. She lay there looking lifeless, an oxygen mask over her nose. The life support machine was attached to her, and its readings showed only a faint thread of life. If care wasn't taken, she might be lost for good. Senior Bleke stared at Alex and shook his head. It was supposed to be D-Day, their wedding day, and here she was on a hospital bed with no hope of waking up. Seeing her like that made him want to cry, but instead he decided to go home and tackle the question of who might have drugged Alex and why. He could trust Josh to take care of his wife while he was gone. "Josh, I need to go home and sort this out. I believe you can take care of Alex. Call me in an emergency," he said, squeezing Josh's right shoulder. Josh watched his grandfather leave, sighed, then pulled out his handkerchief and wiped the sweat forming on his forehead. The hospital smell irritated his nose. He wrinkled it, trying to block the stench from his nostrils. No matter how beautiful a hospital looked, it was still a place no one wanted to be. If the smell bothered him, what about the woman lying there, unable to react? He looked around the ward. It was neat and well kept, about twice the size of an average modern bedroom. Besides the bed Alex lay on, there was another large bed to the left that could hold 2 people. The room was well ventilated, though the sharp scent of medication still hung in the air. The floor was tiled. Josh scanned the room and huffed. No matter how nicely they try to present you, you're still a ward, and people aren't meant to be here, especially people dear to me, he muttered. He sat beside Alex and stared at her still face. The only sign of life was the faint rise and fall of her chest. She wore a hospital gown. His shirt and briefs had long since been removed. He took her hands in his. They were cold as ice. Instead of letting go, he held on. His heart twisted. There were better places for her to be than here. Alex should have been out looking for trouble with him or getting ready for the sudden wedding that was supposed to happen today. "Alex, do you really need to be here?" He whispered. "I know I've been a jerk. I barely know you. I'm trouble and I admit it. I take the blame for yesterday. You were probably heartbroken over your breakup with Luke, and learning why he left made it worse. What you said to me was your comeback to him. I was angry that you tried to turn that situation to your advantage, and I chose to be a jerk. I didn't plan for things to go the way they did. I didn't know grandfather would seize the chance to make me marry you. You don't have to marry me. Just come back and you're free. I'll tell grandpa if that's what you want. Just come back." Josh had always acted tough in front of everyone. Left to him, this wasn't the life he wanted. He had learned to build walls around his heart so nothing could reach him. He was naturally emotional and hated that about himself. His parents' neglect had forced him to toughen up. He never understood why they hadn't cared for him. And Luke being tough had become cool. It helped him control his feelings. As a boy and now as a man, he believed he was meant to take charge. That was why he built his own business rather than join the family's, so he wouldn't have to think about his childhood. Showing no emotion when dealing with people had become his watchword. It was why he had dragged Alex yesterday, even when she begged him to let her go, though he still couldn't explain it. He wanted her to pay for the damaged car, when in truth, he simply wanted her company. She had stirred something in him yesterday. He realized she was the only person who could swing his moods so easily, and he wanted to see how long that spark would last. He could have let her go, but something kept telling him to teach her a lesson. He desired her, maybe for one night of fun, maybe for many nights, so long as the spark remained. But why? Alex, of all people, when there were so many pretty girls who would give anything to be with him. Her resistance was what made him keep dragging her along. His grandfather, ever the opportunist, took advantage of that and forced a wedding on them. After everything he'd said, Alex didn't so much as blink. Her stillness hurt him most of all. When did Josh Bleke start catching feelings? Alex, who hadn't moved an inch since her last encounter with the friend next door, had been rooted to the spot ever since. She was battling confusion and couldn't understand what was going on. If it was a dream, she wanted to wake up from it. She sighed, turned her back on the building, and began to move away. She would just have to check on the next friend. She was beginning to feel chilly, so she pulled on her gloves and wrapped her scarf. The coat she wore wasn't warm enough to protect her from the cold. Winter on Christmas morning was always harsh, and though the season usually brought joy, she found none today. She felt out of place, and tears began to sting. He and her brother were supposed to be singing Christmas hymns and dancing like they did every Christmas morning. Hot tears filled her eyes, and she let them flow. Alex could be strong when she wanted to be, but when she cried, she did it well. Crying emptied all the bitterness in her soul, and afterward filled her with strength. She walked blindly, tears rolling down her face. The more she wiped them, the more they flowed. If only she could understand what was happening to her, it would be better for her. Josh sighed after several attempts to talk Alex out of the world she had created for herself. He needed her to know she didn't belong there. Even if she felt he had been mean to her, she should do it for grandfather. He loved her. An hour had passed without any movement from her, and it was killing him slowly. The doctor had said there would be an improvement if he kept talking to her. She should have been trying to get on his nerves or preparing for their wedding, but instead she lay lifeless, something he could not bear. He glanced down and realized he was still in his pajamas. He took her right hand and kissed her knuckles. It was so cold he looked up at her face and stilled. Tears were flowing freely from her eyes. He wondered what was tormenting her or whether she was in trouble. "Alex, whatever problem you have over there, fight it. Don't let it overcome you. From the little I know of you, you're a tigress. So face it and conquer it. Keep at the back of your mind that grandfather loves you. He does." Josh wiped her tears, hoping she would do as he said and conquer her demons. Luke woke with a start and stretched. He felt energized. He slipped off the bed and grinned. He couldn't tell how long he had slept, but it didn't matter as long as he enjoyed it. He slid into his flip-flops and stepped into the corridor. The mansion was unusually quiet for his liking. What was with the silence? The maid should have been up and about. Breakfast should have been served. Today was Christmas. It still didn't matter because it had never mattered for as long as he could remember. He couldn't understand why his family wouldn't celebrate Christmas like every other family, his weirdo family. He stopped and thought for a while. Why would grandfather fix my wedding for today when he knows it's Christmas? Or did he forget that Christmas is taboo to the Blekes? The first time he said he was getting married and asked his grandfather to choose the date, Luke never once imagined his grandfather would pick Christmas Day. Luke shrugged and continued down the long corridor. He took 2 steps forward, then doubled back. He passed his big brother's room, and no sound came from within. What could be the cause of the silence? He tiptoed to the door and pressed his ear against it. Nothing. He pulled his ear away, pressed it back. Still nothing. He had made up his mind to open the door when a voice made him freeze. "Young man, haven't you heard that eavesdropping is bad?" JB had spoken. Luke sighed in relief. It was only his dad. If it had been his grandfather, he would have had some explaining to do. "I was just on my way to the dining room when I passed by, and the place was too quiet, so I decided to see if they were okay. Why would I want to eavesdrop on them?" Luke said with a chuckle. He straightened and gave his father a cheeky smile. JB knew from his son's behavior that there was more to it. He couldn't be merely eavesdropping on Josh and his wife-to-be. "Dad, see you later. I am famished," Luke said, walking past his father with a straight face. JB looked at the closed door and wondered whether a wedding day was supposed to be that quiet. They should have been up and about. "Man, what kind of father is he?" he muttered. He shook his head and went back to his room. He had just come from his father's room. The old man wasn't there, and JB had no clue where he might have gone. He had gone to see him only to find the room empty. Silas drove into the mansion, and Anders' mouth fell open in surprise. This was more than a building. He saw places like this only in the movies, and he wondered what kind of connection his sister had to be with someone this rich. He didn't know his sister anymore. To be greeted by a view as beautiful as this on a Christmas morning. Indeed, it was a beautiful way to start Christmas. Silas chuckled and opened his door. He wasn't surprised by the young man's reaction. The kid was probably overwhelmed. Ender climbed out quickly and let his eyes roam over the mansion. The place seemed made of mirrors. The walls gleamed like glass. He could hardly tell the windows from the walls. Beautiful rose bushes ringed the grounds. The rosebuds were so lovely he felt he could make a bed of them. It was more than a masterpiece, and that was the most fascinating thing about the mansion. He looked around and spotted a car park at the far end of the property. The man who had driven him hadn't parked there. Ender had seen skyscrapers only in movies. The building before him looked like a modest version of one, yet also like a mansion. The architecture leaned more toward a skyscraper than a manor. But whatever it was stunningly built. He couldn't wait to explore it after he met his sister. He looked down. The interlocked pavement felt cool beneath his feet. Money really was good. He was at a loss for words to describe the scene. It felt like something out of a film, and he was shocked to be standing here. Most surprising of all was how his sister had ended up with someone who had this kind of money and what it meant for her relationship with Uncle Luke. This is not the sister he knows, he thought. She had never mentioned any of this, which made the situation feel wrong. He had checked his phone throughout the ride, waiting for her call, but it never came. It was unusual. She was supposed to call and tell him not to worry, that she was safe. Silas pulled his backpack from the car and was surprised by the worry on the young man's face. Moments ago, Ender had been radiant with happiness, and now Silas could see he was anxious about his sister. "You don't have to be like this. Your sister is fine," Silas said. "She can't get to you right now, but she will in due time. Trust me, she's fine." Ender sighed and nodded. He would have to wait and see how things unfolded. Silas led the way. After 4 steps, Ender stopped. Silas's words had finally sunk in. If she would call in due time, then his sister was not in this mansion. "Sir, are you saying my sister isn't here?" Silas stopped and turned. Ender had fallen several paces behind. "No, she's not. She's at the other mansion. Rest assured, she'll come to see you when the time comes." Some things are unexplainable. Ender stared at him in disbelief. Why hadn't Silas said so from the start? He had been eager to meet his sister, and now this. Yet, despite himself, he realized he trusted the man's words. A rare thing for him, he didn't trust easily. The only people he trusted were Jordan and his big sister. He shrugged and caught up, and together they went inside. On the way, Silas had taken a call from Senior Bleke, who had warned him not to bring the young man to the main estate. So, Silas had diverted to the Bleke mansion outside town. Senior Bleke wanted to fish out the foxes among the sheep. Otherwise, what happened to Alex might also happen to her brother. His only wish was for Alex to wake up. Then they would decide whether the wedding would still hold. The girl's life was precious to him. He hated it when someone he cared about suffered. Heaven helped the soul that committed this unforgivable act. The culprit had not yet received the punishment he deserved, and when it came, the punishment would leave a scar on the heart, a reminder of the sin against him. People often acted without considering the consequences, then begged for mercy. To Senior Bleke, mercy after the deed was medicine after death. He did not take things lightly with anyone. Jude, the second driver whom Senior Bleke had called, arrived at Gray's hospital within minutes. There was no smile on his employer's face, and Jude shuddered. Whoever had provoked the old man would not escape his wrath, he thought. He pitied that damned person. Senior Bleke acknowledged his greeting, got into the car, and they left almost immediately. He fumed the entire ride, and Jude feared for his life. He drove carefully, wary of the trap that already seemed set. By the time they reached the mansion, Jude had prayed countless times. When Senior Bleke stepped out of the car, Jude finally exhaled the breath he'd been holding. What a relief, he thought. Senior Bleke entered the mansion, and every soul who saw him froze. It wasn't a side of him they saw often. What could have put the old man in such a mood? No one had an answer. He scanned the faces of each employee he passed on the way to his room, finding nothing. If they could mask their expressions, the CCTV would help him. He had no need to worry. "Dad," He turned and saw his son studying him with a worried look. "I came to your room a few moments ago, but couldn't find you. Where did you go, son?" "I want to take care of something. I'm back now. So whatever you want to say, check on me in a few minutes." "There's something I need to see to right now," Senior Bleke said. "All right, I'll check on you in a few minutes then." Senior Bleke didn't wait for him to finish. He left, some of the boy's words hanging in the air. JB thought, this father of his is something else. He walked into his bedroom and shut the door. Luke, who had been watching from the corner, couldn't make out what the two had said, but from the look of things, his grandfather was not happy. Maybe he had received the news of the priest's disappearance. Luke smiled. "I haven't even started. By the time I am done, Alex will have no option but to run to me." Senior Bleke entered and shut his door, then went to his computer room to see things for himself. He sat down and rewound the footage from that moment back to the dinner they'd had yesterday. He kept searching, but the footage wasn't clear. Parts had been tampered with, and whoever did it tried to leave no trace, but that was where they were wrong. He took out his phone and connected it to the system. His phone was linked to every secret camera in the mansion, so whenever he couldn't find something on the computer, he used his phone, and there he would get the answer. He didn't have to search for long. Boom, there it was. He cursed and stared hard at the image of the perpetrator. Alex walked on with tearful eyes, her beautiful face streaked with tears. The Christmas morning breeze did nothing to help. If anything, it added to her pain. She was miserably unhappy, and the whole world seemed to feel it. Crying had always been her only way of finding relief. She passed the Catholic church opposite her friend's house and watched people go in and out. It was obvious a Christmas service would soon begin. A woman walked by with a 6-year-old boy, the pair chatting and laughing. It could have been her and Ander going for Christmas prayers today, but he was nowhere to be found. "Please, Santa, protect him for me. He's all I have," she prayed and walked on. She went a little farther and reached another of Ander's friends. The house stood alone, looking as full as she felt. She reached the large door, knocked and waited. The Christmas decorations added color to a building that otherwise lacked any. It was painted a dreary gray, and Alex wondered why it had been painted that way. It felt as if there was a story behind that building. She knocked again, but no one opened. She waited patiently for someone to come and let her in. Minutes passed. Still no sign of anyone. She couldn't keep waiting when there were other friends she needed to check. Moving on would be best. No one being there could only mean one thing. Her brother wasn't there. She sighed and turned her back on the building. "Too much for one morning," she murmured. She left sadly. By now, she was no longer crying or lightheaded. She was ready to find her brother. Whatever it took, she just needed the strength to do it. And for that strength, she prayed, asking Santa to grant it. Lucy, who was mopping the kitchen floor, felt uneasy. She couldn't understand why. She went over her chores. She had done everything she'd been asked, but the feeling wouldn't leave. Today was unusually quiet. The mansion lacked cheer, but that didn't necessarily make it a graveyard, so the silence shouldn't have felt threatening to her. It wasn't really in her power to make anything happen. She could only hope for the best. The best gift for her right now would be to go and celebrate Christmas with her own people, because the Blekes, as she knew them, seemed cursed never to celebrate Christmas. She'd actually been surprised when she first heard Luke was getting married on the 25th of December and thought maybe there would finally be a little change in the house. She was wrong. Nothing changed. She couldn't even say whether the wedding would still hold. Nothing in the house showed that a wedding was happening today. Gradually, Alex's tears stopped. Josh sighed in relief. He'd thought she might never stop. "See how you've made me worry, Alex. Why do you have to lie here for me to realize how important you are to me? I've only known you for a few hours, yet it feels like I've known you forever, Alex. Dear, come back to me. I miss your trouble. I want you to wake up and irritate me like you always do. Please, can you do that for me?" Josh spoke with the hope that she would wake up, and he believed she would. He dare not think otherwise. He chuckled at himself at how quickly his feelings had grown, even with Alex doing little or nothing. His fingers had been intertwined with hers ever since. He'd been warming her hands with his. Josh was exhausted physically and mentally. He had no appetite. After one more glance at her, he gently rested his head on her lap and drifted into dreamland. Senior Bleke watched the clip showing melatonin being added to Alex's meal and was enraged. People do things without thinking, and if I repay those who offend me, the world will say I'm evil, but I don't care. He needed to act, and he would act immediately. He stood, took his laptop, and left the computer room. He reached the top of the stairs, looked down to the ground floor, and descended one step at a time until he reached the hall. He struck the emergency bell, and in less than a few minutes, all his workers had assembled, each wearing a look of confusion at the sudden summons. He scanned their faces one by one, and finally his gaze settled on Lucy. Lucy's heart raced when she saw the old man looking at her. "Lucy, kindly tell us why you had to drub my granddaughter-in-law." Lucy gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. How could she explain now? Luke, who had just come downstairs for breakfast, heard him and hurried into the living room. "Grandfather, did you say Alex was drugged?" he asked. His grandfather replied with a nod. "Yes, Luke, and I'm here to know why this lady would do such an evil thing. Does she want Alex dead or what? On what ground has Alex offended her that she would treat someone she met only yesterday like this?" Lucy slowly dropped to her knees and pleaded with the old man. She hadn't known she was going to get caught. She thought her life was over if he fired her. Funny that she imagined dismissal would be punishment enough for her. Silas. Jackson, one of his men, appeared immediately when he heard his boss call. "Yes, big boss. Get the officer. Someone needs to be dealt with. I don't care why she did what she did. She will pay dearly for it. She should just pray Alex wakes up first, or..." Senior Bleke said expressionless. His words were final. Lucy lifted her tear-filled eyes and looked at Senior Bleke. From the way he kept staring at her, she realized she was in a big mess. She shouldn't have done what she did. What had she even been thinking? "Sir, I'm deeply sorry for what I did. I don't know what came over me. I can accept any punishment, but please don't get the police involved. I beg you," she pleaded, hoping Senior Bleke would listen. Luke scoffed and shot her a glare. "One more word from you, and you won't see the light of the next day," Senior Bleke threatened. Lucy shuddered. She knew she was on her own, and the person who had pushed her into this had ganged up with his grandfather to turn against her. The rich think they could do anything and get away with it, and surely they always do. Senior Bleke waved his hand, and the rest of his staff dispersed one after another. No one wanted to be on the man's bad side today. The other maids pitied Lucy. They had long known that with the way she behaved, she would eventually get into trouble, and it was a pity it had to be on Christmas Day. Who knew what their employer had in store for her? Still, whatever punishment she received, she deserved it. She hadn't thought twice before drugging that lady. What if the lady died? It didn't take the police long to reach the Bleke's mansion. They hauled the criminal away without asking questions. There was no need. All they had to do was wait for the man to give orders, and they would carry them out. That was how powerful Senior Bleke was. Luke, practically bubbling with excitement, could not wait to share the good news with Stacy. Alex was in the hospital, critically ill. The chance she would wake was almost zero. He knew exactly how much melatonin they'd had Lucy mix into the pasta. She was going to sleep for a very long time. Could today be any happier? No, it was only the beginning. By the time he was done with all of them, they would be at his mercy. He excused himself from his grandfather and went to his room. Breakfast was forgotten. The good news alone could keep him from feeling hungry for a long time. Senior Bleke rose from the cushion where he had been sitting and returned to his room. He wasn't hungry anyway. It was almost past breakfast time, but that didn't matter. His only concern was for his daughter-in-law to wake up. As he reached his room, a call came in from Silas. "Hello, sir." Silas's voice came through the speaker. "Silas, have you delivered the boy home?" he asked. "Sir, I've got bad news. The priest has been kidnapped." Senior Bleke cursed under his breath. Whoever dared him like this had nerve. Silas, do the needful and get back to me when you have good news. Meanwhile, make sure the boy is comfortable before leaving the mansion. Yes, sir. The line went dead. Mr. Jackson sat in his large living room, puffing on tobacco, when a call came in. It was from one of his men, the one he trusted most to give first-hand information. He picked up and waited for the man to speak. Sir, the priest was saved from his kidnappers. He's now in our custody. Great. Don't do anything. Wait for further instructions from me, he said, and hung up. He stared into space, deep in thought. He had raised his daughter to fight for her rights, but she should also know when to back down. It was obvious she and Josh Bleke were not meant to be together. Why was she fighting it? Did she think he would look her way even if she did everything for him? When a man's heart is not with you, no matter what you do, he will never come back. No one is worth dying for. He would have to teach her a lesson she would remember. He picked up his phone, dialed a number, and ended the call almost immediately. Sir, breakfast is served. One of his maids called from afar. Mr. Jackson smiled to show he'd heard, and she left at once. At 9 o'clock on Christmas morning, Stacy was pushing a shopping cart through the mall. She'd gone shopping after realizing she needed a few things. A call had informed her that the operation had been executed successfully by her men. Ever since, she had been overjoyed. No one is going to take you away from me, she said, continuing to push the cart. The news she'd gotten from Luke a few minutes earlier added to her happiness. Today wasn't the first time I used melatonin. I know how effective it is. That lady will have to sleep for a very long time, she murmured as she moved along. At the counter, she handed her card to the cashier. The woman, about Stacy's age, smartly dressed in a plain sky blue shirt and deep blue trousers with black flats, took the card and smiled. A moment later, she looked up at Stacy, who raised her brows in askance. There's no money in here, Mom, the cashier said, handing the card back. Stacy took it absent-mindedly. What had happened to her card? What did the woman mean? There was no money in her account. Her account officer had some explaining to do. Would you be kind enough to tell me what happened to my money? She demanded over the phone. The account officer, who had expected her call, wasn't surprised. Sorry, Mom. Orders from above. Your father had the money withdrawn a few moments ago. Saw the call ended. Stacy clenched her fists until her knuckles nearly turned white. She couldn't believe her father had humiliated her like this for no reason. She apologized to the staff and left, fuming. Her dad was really getting on her nerves, and she'd almost had it up to her neck. Stacy parked her car and in a flash rushed out. She nearly somersaulted. Her high heels could barely keep up, or rather could barely hold her weight. She barged into the living room and found it empty. At this hour, there was only one place her dad would be, the dining room. It was his breakfast time. Anyway, she tried to calm herself as she walked, but she couldn't. The more she thought about why her dad had made off with her money, the angrier she became. Dad, with all due respect, what happened to my money? She demanded the moment she reached the dining room. You mean my money, Stacy? He asked warmly. She puffed out her cheeks and glared at him. When had her dad started referring to her money as his? Dad, you know what I'm talking about. You don't have to do that, she said, a bit calmer this time. Mr. Jackson set down his fork and wiped his mouth. His appetite vanished. He couldn't understand when his daughter had become this unruly. Had she really lost all respect overnight? Young lady, he said, may I remind you that I am the reason you're standing here talking to me? You are Stacy Jackson because of me. One more act of disrespect, and you will cease to be my daughter. He stood and walked out, not caring how she would take what he'd said. Stacy couldn't have changed overnight. Who was giving her the audacity to disrespect him? After he lost his wife, he had made sure to give Stacy everything she wanted. He knew how close his wife had been to their daughter, and so Stacy wouldn't feel her absence. He went the extra mile to cushion the pain of her mother's departure. Stacy's anger blurred her vision, and her face grew pale. This was unbelievable. When had her dad changed this much? She needed to be sure. Was this really her father? Or had something possessed him? Begging him wasn't an option. For her to beg, the world would have to end first. There was only one alternative. She had to do what she had never done before. She needed to show him she could do without his money. She pulled out her phone, tapped in a number, and raised it to her ear. "Hello," she said, a look of disgust on her face. She hated herself in that moment. The man on the other end smirked, still wondering if it was truly Stacy Jackson, the pompous lady of his time. Yet he loved her just like that. "You calling me on Christmas morning will bring me good fortune, my darling," he said. She cursed under her breath. This was not going to end well. She could tell he'd been smirking all along. "I need help from you. Can I come over?" "Definitely. I'll be expecting you." And just like that, the idiot hung up exactly as she'd muttered he would. One word for Stacy Jackson. Alex made it to Anders' third friend and came up empty. They didn't recognize her either. She stopped to check herself, wondering if she suddenly no longer looked like Alex, or if she had changed so much that people who knew her before now denied it. All of this felt strange. The fourth friend wouldn't be around. The family always went on vacation every Christmas. So she had no choice but to think her brother might truly be missing. She broke down afresh and began to cry. She felt so lost. Her brother was her world. This couldn't be happening. A light touch on her shoulder made her turn. A young man studied her, wondering why a pretty lady would be crying on the road on Christmas morning. He looked familiar to Alex, but she couldn't place where she knew him from. "Good morning, Mom." Alex lifted her trembling lips to respond, but words refused to form. "It's fine, but what's making you cry on this beautiful morning?" Alex stared at the man. Her voice had deserted her. She pulled out her phone, then remembered it was dead, slipped it back in her bag, and sighed through tears, not knowing how else to help. And because she wouldn't speak, he simply pulled her into a hug and whispered in her ear, "It's going to be fine. Just have faith." He pulled away, kissed her forehead, and left. She felt calmer, and even managed to smile as she watched him walk away. A heavy yawn overtook her. Her eyelids fought to stay open. She walked to a corner, sat quietly, and fell asleep. Josh woke with a start. The monitor attached to Alex was beeping, and she was struggling to breathe. His heart skipped beat after beat as he raced out the door to call the doctor. A nurse saw him running and stopped him. Josh couldn't find the words, so he pointed at the room repeatedly. Understanding that the patient in that ward might be in danger, the nurse rushed to the doctor's office while Josh hurried back to Alex's room. His heart pounded so hard he feared it might fall out his chest. He reached her bedside the moment he returned and crouched beside her. "Alex, you don't have to do this. I don't know much about your relationship with your brother, but if you're worried about him, I want you to know he's fine and he misses you so much. Please don't leave us." The machine stopped beeping and her breathing normalized. Seeing she was calm, Josh checked that she was still breathing. She was. He exhaled and slumped to the floor. Alex had nearly given him a heart attack. When did he start caring so much about her? Alex's eyes opened slowly. She blinked, trying to adjust to the light without success. She tried again, and this time she managed to keep them open. She was still trying to figure out where she was when she noticed someone by the wall. Josh sitting on his heels, looking helpless. She looked around and couldn't recognize the place immediately. She tried to remember how she had gotten there, but her memory was blurry. Alex tried to lift her hand, but realized she couldn't. Something was attached to it. She felt uncomfortable and discovered a mask covering her nose, making it hard to breathe. She began to struggle, and that was when Josh looked up and saw she was awake. His heart leapt with joy. He couldn't describe how he felt at that moment. Seeing her awake alone gave him indescribable relief. Josh is here, and I'm in the hospital. That's what it looks like, she thought, wondering why or how. Could it be Josh's fault because he didn't want her as his wife? He scrambled to her bedside and removed the oxygen mask. At that moment, 2 nurses and the doctor ran into the ward. The doctor's stethoscope draped around his neck. The doctor examined her, scribbled something on the blue board, and handed it back to the nurse he'd taken it from. He was surprised that with the amount of melatonin found in Alex's system, she had woken within a few hours. A Christmas miracle must have happened. Something had brought her back from her deep slumber. "Excuse me, both of you. I want to have a word with the patient," the doctor said to the nurses. They bowed and left. He was done anyway, and there were many people to attend to. So instead of the nurses staying here doing nothing, they should get busy. "Miss Coker, how are you feeling?" the doctor asked. Alex's eyes, however, were fixed on Josh. She was trying to understand what was really going on, and she thought only Josh could give her an answer because she believed he was the reason she was in the hospital. In that moment, her hatred for him intensified. "I'm good," she replied and tried to sit up. She couldn't. Josh moved to help her, but she shot him a glare, and he stepped back looking hurt. "Just when he's beginning to like me, I bring out this attitude," she thought. "That's great to hear. You're quite the survivor." "Welcome back," the doctor said. "I'll have the hospital restaurant deliver something for you to eat. You need your strength, Mr. Bleke. Over to you." He left almost immediately. Josh smiled up at her. "Hey, Mrs. Bleke, how are you? You finally decided to wake up. I was beginning to think you'd remain there, so I could have my peace," he said sarcastically, trying to mask the hurt in his eyes. The way she shoved them away really got to him, and he blamed himself for trying to care. Being treated the way she had treated him a while ago felt like a poor reward for praying she would wake. Maybe he shouldn't be nice at all. He wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, but her attitude changed his mind. Now that she was awake, he would go back to being Josh Bleke. The wedding would go on. But as for catching feelings for Alex, he couldn't risk his heart. He didn't wait for her reply. He turned and walked away. Alex was speechless. A moment ago, she thought he had been kind. The look of relief she saw in his eyes when he realized she was awake had been so real. Yet in the next minute, he had returned to the Josh she knew. And maybe she was right. Maybe he was the reason she was in the hospital and was only being nice to soothe his guilty conscience. How quick she was to judge him. Still, she felt oddly relieved. She wasn't going to accept Josh being suddenly nice. It was better he be himself, so she would know how to deal with him. She tried getting up again, and this time succeeded. She removed what was attached to her hand and sighed. She felt lightheaded and a severe headache kicked in. "The idiot couldn't wait for me. He just left me to die on my own," she hissed, grunting at the pain in the right side of her stomach. Her stomach rumbled, and she covered it in shame. She couldn't tell what time it was or how far the day had gone for crying out loud. She was supposed to be preparing for her wedding or would have been wedded by now. Alex's heart skipped, and she shivered. It was the sign she always had whenever she felt she wasn't doing something right. Then she remembered she hadn't reached out to her brother. He might be stranded at her apartment or worried about her. She needed to do something fast. She had to get to her brother ASAP. She was weak and hungry, but she could still manage. He was the only thing that mattered to her, forgetting that if something happened to her, her brother would feel the impact. She pushed aside thoughts of her own health. Alex was too stubborn to listen even to herself. She managed to leave the ward in her hospital gown. With every step she took, she grew weaker. Ask Alex where she was going. She had no clue. All she knew was that she wanted to find a way to reach her brother. She didn't know the direction to the Bleke's mansion, nor did she know her brother's digits by heart. She had never thought a time would come when she would need that number so badly. She had no idea how to get to the Bleke mansion. She didn't know the place, though she could ask around. She staggered toward the exit, praying she wouldn't meet a nurse who would question where she was going. She almost made it out and was ready to be grateful if she slipped away unnoticed. She couldn't afford to miss this opportunity. Josh, who was at the hospital entrance trying to clear his head, saw a figure approaching. From the way the person walked, he could tell they were struggling. He grew angry, questioning the professionalism of the hospital. Why would they allow a patient to fend for themselves? He vowed to take Alex out of there as soon as possible. He started to turn away, but caught a glimpse of the person's face. It was Alex. She wasn't walking anymore. The next thing he saw, she was slowly folding toward the floor. With every ounce of strength he had, Josh broke into a run and thankfully reached her before she hit the ground. "Ander," she whispered and blacked out in his arms. Stacy stepped out of her car with a deep frown. She wasn't smiling at all. She was determined to prove to her father that she could do without him, even though she knew deep down that she couldn't. She stared at the old-looking building before her. She would be ashamed to explain why she was there or how she had come. But did she still have any shame? It's no big deal anyway. As long as I get what I want, how I get it isn't a problem. With that, she headed inside. She didn't need to knock. The door opened as if someone had been watching all along. He had been expecting her. She sighed and went in. She had come too far to back out. There was no going back for her. She walked into what could be called a living room, but it was empty. She looked around and saw a smiling portrait of the jerk hanging on the left wall. It was the only normal thing in the room. Everything else seemed odd. There was no TV, just 2 sets of cushions, and the place looked like it hadn't been cleaned for days, almost as empty as its occupant. Stacy hissed aloud. She couldn't believe the Gregory she once knew had become this person. He had been a sweet soul back in the day, her best buddy growing up, the one who made her childhood and teenage years memorable. How easily people drift in life. When you're done staring, come up, darling. The voice came from a microphone on the wall, Gregory's voice. She turned toward the stairs. This was her first time there. Although he had persuaded her to visit several times, Stacy could never bring herself to see a guy like Gregory. He had money, yes, but his lifestyle was nothing to write home about. At the top of the stairs, Gregory stood watching her with a smile plastered across his face. A smile of victory. Unbelievable. Stacy Jackson, his longtime lover, had chosen to visit him on a day like this. To him, this Christmas was blessed. He would have died for Stacy, but she chose Josh Bleke over him. If not for the Bleke's connections, Josh would already be a thing of the past. But Gregory knew the danger of provoking a lion. He couldn't lay a finger on the true blood of the Bleke. "Stacy, darling, I don't bite. You might as well come and hug me," he said, still smiling. Stacy swallowed hard and gave herself a mental shake. Associating with Gregory meant danger. Getting involved with him would put her freedom at risk, and her father wouldn't save her when the time came. She knew the disadvantages of getting involved with Gregory outweighed the advantages. She could use his influence to get back at Josh and his bride. But would she be able to free herself once she was no longer comfortable with Gregory? Of course not. The Gregory she knew never let go. She could turn back and walk out, but that would make her a coward, and she refused to be one. She wanted to prove to her dad that she could do what she wanted without him. Every action has a consequence, and Stacy Jackson knew this. She walked into Gregory's open arms and embraced him. He reeked of wine and cigarettes, and she wrinkled her nose to stop herself from inhaling the smell. The stench was overwhelming, but she couldn't show displeasure if she wanted to get what she came for. She tried to pull away, but Gregory held her tight. "Allow me to hold you. I don't know when I'll have this opportunity again. You might leave today and decide not to come back," he said with a grin. "Gray, I'm suffocating here. You wouldn't want me to die before you hear why I'm here, would you?" Gregory released her and turned his back. "I thought as much. You wouldn't come looking for me if you didn't want something. It's a pity, though." Stacy barely heard him. Her focus was on him. Gregory, once full of life and energy, now looked lifeless, just existing. She pitied him. That's what drugs do to a human being. Before he ventured into drugs, Gregory had been every woman's kind of man. She had been among the women who wanted him, and he never once hid that he loved her. She had money, and he had money. They seemed compatible, or so she thought. Just when she was about to say yes to a relationship with him, Josh Bleke appeared, and every feeling she had for Gregory disappeared. After learning that Gregory dealt in drugs, she hated him even more and vowed never to have anything to do with him. Yet here she was going back on her words. "Gray, you don't need to whine. Just help me out, and I'll give you what you want," she said. Gregory grinned and turned to face her. "Anything?" he asked, making sure they were on the same page. "Anything," Stacy repeated. "And you won't go back on your word?" "Definitely not. she replied, growing frustrated. Okay, it's a deal. Follow me, he said, starting to walk away. Stacy followed, having no idea where they were headed. Senior Bleke had just hung up. Silas had discovered the priest's whereabouts and had wasted no time informing his boss. It was good news, and more good news had come earlier. The doctor had called to say that Alex was awake and would be fit to come home as soon as possible. As for the wedding, he wasn't sure it would still hold. That wasn't a problem. It could take place any time. No big deal. He decided to go and see how she was faring. He stood to leave when his phone rang again. It was Officer John, one of the officers who had arrested Lucy. He answered without a second thought. Sir, we got bad news. The lady is dead, the officer said. Senior Bleke cursed under his breath. What do you mean the lady is dead? Sir, I don't know. We found her about 30 minutes ago, and her body has been taken to the prison clinic. An autopsy is being performed right now. We believe she died of poison.